Darius Cole was smeared with engine grease, his hands shaking as alarms blared throughout the runway. No one had faith that the impoverished mechanic could even lay a finger on a private jet, much less rescue it. Yet, as the aircraft carrying, a formidable billionaire woman started to emit smoke. He moved forward, driven solely by instinct and his bare hands. The team ridiculed him. The audience stood in astonishment. The events that followed compelled the entire world to come to a halt. Moments later, she knelt down on one knee. Before we dive in, please give this video a thumbs up and let us know your location in the comments. Your support enables us to share more impactful narratives. Let us commence. The sun beat down relentlessly on the worn tarmac of Fairview Regional Airport. As Darius Cole wiped the sweat from his brow with a sleeve already drenched in oil, his coveralls bore tears at the knees, and his boots were scuffed from countless hours of labor that went unappreciated. Surrounding him, men in gleaming vests shouted commands into radios, paying no mind to the individual who had dedicated 15 years to mending engines without a word of gratitude. Darius stood solitary by the fence, observing the turmoil unfold as a polished silver jet came to an abrupt, jarring halt on the runway, its engine sputtering black smoke into the azure sky. A throng had assembled by the chain-link fence. Devices were raised, murmurs swirled. A private jet poised for takeoff now coughed and wheezed like a creature in distress. The emblem on the side shimmered in a radiant gold, Wellington Enterprises. The name was known by all in Fairview. Eleanor Wellington was more than merely wealthy. She reigned supreme among the billionaires, commanding a vast empire of aerospace companies, tech ventures, and a significant portion of Houston's skyline. No one approached her jet. No one, but now it would be necessary for someone to take action. Darius's gaze swept over the chaos. 3 men clad in maintenance uniforms stood motionless. A wrench fell from one's grasp. A fire truck sat motionless, caught in a moment of hesitation about whether to charge forward. At that moment, Eleanor emerged from the cabin door. She bore no resemblance to the images gracing the glossy pages of magazines. Her white suit billowed gracefully in the breeze. Her hair was neatly secured in a practical bun. Her gaze was keen, meticulously surveying the surroundings with unwavering authority until it settled on him. "Greetings," she called out amidst the turmoil. Her voice resonated with clarity. Individuals shifted their attention. Darius surveyed the surroundings with a sense of hesitation. She gestured. "You approach me at this moment." Joyful sounds echoed among the ground crew. A man let out a derisive snort. "She can't possibly be serious. That individual isn't even on the payroll." Another remarked that he is merely a mechanic who struggles to maintain consistent employment. Yet Darius pressed on. With each deliberate step, his boots struck the concrete, echoing like the beat of a war drum. As he neared the jet, a warning siren erupted from the undercarriage. He fell to his knees, disregarding the sharp intakes of breath from those around him. Just the basics, nothing elaborate, no specialized instruments. Only his fingers, his intuition, and countless years of crafting from emptiness. He plunged his hand into the searing panel, the heat searing his skin, and turned a valve that had gone unnoticed by others. The aircraft let out a weary sound, and then there was silence. Pristine, lucid, steady. Eleanor gazed intently at him while the crowd remained silent, anticipation hanging in the air. She advanced, the sound of her heels echoing with each step. Without uttering a single word, she gracefully descended to one knee. Time stood still. Gas surged through the crowd, reminiscent of a spark setting dry grass ablaze. Airport personnel, executives, and even the pilot stood in stunned silence as Eleanor Wellington, one of the most influential women in America, knelt before a man whose clothes were tattered, whose hands were smeared with engine oil, and whose name remained unknown to everyone on that runway until this moment. Darius Cole remained silent. He remained still, his eyes flickering as though the spectacle before him was a fragment of a harsh nightmare. Eleanor's hand slipped into the depths of her blazer pocket, searching for something elusive. With deliberate grace, she extracted a silver ring, not sparkling with jewels, but marked with the logo of her enterprise, the very symbol on the side of the aircraft. She raised it toward him, her voice steady and resolute. "Your hands have just preserved a machine that holds more value than many of the structures in Manhattan," she remarked. her gaze fixed on his. "What truly amazed me was your ability to achieve. This despite the doubt surrounding you. Not even those who are compensated to resolve it. You took action, you took the lead. You witnessed what remained hidden from everyone else." Darius's lips parted, yet silence lingered in the air. Behind him, the ground crew whispered in astonishment. A tall man with aviator shades turned and muttered, "This cannot be real." Another let out a nervous chuckle, attempting to ease the tension in the air. She is likely just having some fun. Yet, Eleanor's expression held no trace of amusement. She rose to her feet, the ring still clutched in her hand. Then she raised her voice so that every person near the runway could hear her. "This individual has just averted a catastrophic jet fuel explosion. The engine was mere seconds away from igniting into flames. I understand. I created it." She faced the attentive audience, "And I observed each of you become still as this individual advanced, lacking any title, badge, or clearance, yet possessing nothing but sheer talent and passion." She glanced back at Darius. "Here's my question. For you, Mr. Cole. My workforce consists of thousands of individuals. I find myself in the company of influential figures, yet none compare to the uniqueness of your presence. Will you be my partner for life?" Silence reigned in the absence of joy, just a profound silence. Darius felt a constriction in his throat. His life unfolded in his mind like a cinematic montage, each moment playing out vividly. Evenings spent resting in his vehicle. Months have passed without a reliable income. Job interviews where he was overlooked before he had a chance to say anything. He recalled the moment a dealership ejected him for inquiring whether they required assistance in the garage. The disgrace, the stillness, the perpetual battle. Before him stood a woman whose visage had graced the screen countless times, posing a question that struck him like a bolt of lightning cleaving the heavens. He gazed at her, then shifted his attention to the ring and finally to the jet, now still and serene in the background. The stillness was intolerable. Even the breeze appeared to pause in anticipation. At last his voice broke the silence that hung heavily in the air. "What makes me the one?" Eleanor smiled slowly and sincerely. "While the world seeks approval, you take action unbidden. And that is the person I desire by my side." Just as Darius was about to respond, a black SUV abruptly skidded onto the runway, and two sharply dressed men leaped out, sprinting toward Eleanor. One of them called out, "Ma'am, we need to have a conversation, at this moment." She pivoted gradually, her smile diminishing. A sense of unease lingered in the air. The two men in tailored suits moved swiftly, their expressions taut, gazes fixed on Eleanor, embodying a blend of urgency and worry. The lively throng at the airport seemed to transform into a focused beam of attention directed exclusively at the three of them. Eleanor grasped the silver ring tightly, the atmosphere thick. With anticipation, Darius stood frozen, grappling with the tumult that had just engulfed him. One of the men cleared his throat and spoke with conviction. "Ms. Wellington, we find ourselves facing a predicament. The board expresses dissatisfaction with the recent developments, raising concerns regarding the maintenance of the jet. They seek clarity before you move forward." Eleanor's jaw clenched, her composed facade wavering for an instant. She cast a fleeting look at Darius, her gaze probing for something, maybe comfort or an indication that this moment was far from finished. Darius experienced a tumultuous blend of feelings within him. Hope, fear, excitement, and uncertainty all intertwined. Here stood a billionaire woman, wielding power that defied imagination, yet even she found herself vulnerable to the pressures exerted by those who prioritized appearances over authenticity. The audience began to murmur once more, their whispers swelling like an approaching wave. "Did he actually fix the jet?" someone inquired. A different voice interjected, "Who is this person anyway?" The naysayers wasted no time voicing their doubts, their skepticism cutting through the wonder that had enveloped the atmosphere just moments earlier. Eleanor lifted her hand, commanding silence from the crowd. "Darius Cole is the hero who rescued this jet and all its passengers," she asserted, her voice resonating with determination. "And those who question him will have to face me." Darius gazed at her, taken aback by the power behind her words. It was a facet of Eleanor he had never anticipated, a fierce guardian, unyielding in her challenge to the established norms. Something within him began to awaken, a flicker of bravery, a glimmer of hope that perhaps his life was on the brink of transformation in ways he had never envisioned. The gentleman in tailored suits shared knowing looks, then gave a subtle nod. "1. Whispered softly to Eleanor. "The board anticipates receiving a comprehensive report by tomorrow morning. There is a desire to uncover the individual who granted permission for this mechanic to operate on the jet without the necessary official clearance." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "They will receive their report, but for the moment I am standing by the individual who rescued my life and the future of my company." Darius inhaled deeply, his thoughts swirling rapidly. This had evolved beyond merely repairing a jet. This was about battling for respect, for dignity, for an opportunity to reshape the narrative that had characterized him for such a long time. Out of nowhere, a journalist from a nearby news outlet made their way through the throng, microphone at the ready. "Ms. Wellington, could you share what transpired here today, and who is the gentleman you just made a proposal to?" The cameras erupted. In a flurry of light, silence fell over the crowd once more. Eleanor gazed at Darius, her expression a blend of pride and a gentler emotion, admiration. "This man is a hero," she stated plainly, "and he is on the brink of transforming everything." Darius felt his heart race. He sensed the burden of each gaze upon him, each anticipation, each dream. For the first time in his life he felt seen. Yet with each question that emerged, the weight of the pressure grew heavier. Uncertainties murmured within his thoughts. Was he capable of rising to the occasion? Could he demonstrate to the world and to himself that he was more than just the impoverished mechanic from an overlooked corner of the city? The runway stretched on infinitely, shrouded in uncertainty about what lay ahead. However, it was evident that this was merely the start. The sun sank gradually on the horizon, stretching shadows across the runway, while Darius Cole stood next to Eleanor Wellington, enveloped by a flurry of flashing cameras and a crowd of faces he never imagined would pay him any mind. His hands bore the marks of toil, his attire frayed and mended, yet his heart pulsed with an unyielding intensity that would not be subdued. This moment transcended the mere conclusion of a crisis. A new chapter was beginning, one he had only envisioned during those quiet moments following long shifts and lonely nights. The journalists clamored for answers, their voices intertwining in a frenzied symphony. How were you able to repair the jet without any tools? What inspired you to take action when others held back? Are you prepared for what lies ahead? Darius responded to each inquiry with unwavering composure, his voice resonating with the depth of every challenge faced and every triumph that had led him to this moment. Eleanor observed him with a beaming smile, her fingers gently cradling the small ring she clutched. The atmosphere transformed as the audience moved from skepticism to admiration, their murmurs giving way to a chorus of applause and cheers. Yet under the applause lay a profound acknowledgement of perseverance, bravery, and the subtle power that emerges from years of battling adversity. As the airport lights faded and the crowd thinned, Darius and Eleanor found themselves seated, together in the expansive cabin of the jet. The air carried a subtle scent of leather and polished metal, creating a striking juxtaposition to the grime and sweat that had enveloped Darius throughout the day. She gazed at him, her eyes mirroring the gentle illumination of the cabin lights. "You accomplished more than merely rescuing a jet today, Darius," she said gently. "You have rekindled hope, not just for yourself, but for all those who have been disregarded." He nodded, the gravity of her words sinking profoundly within him. He acknowledged that it has been quite challenging. "I have encountered doors shut tight against me, murmurs suggesting I was out of place. I have repaired things that others were unwilling to address. But today, something shifted." Eleanor extended, her hand intertwining her fingers with his. "And tomorrow we will ensure that the world is aware of it." The subsequent days unfolded in a flurry of activity. Headlines hailed Darius as a hero, embodying unwavering determination and resilience. Opportunities flooded in, proposals for collaboration and partnerships, invitations to gatherings he had only witnessed on screen. Amidst everything, Darius stayed rooted, reflecting on the challenges that had molded him. He returned to the repair shop where his journey began, exchanging warm greetings with familiar faces and mentors who had faith in him when others did not. He addressed community centers, inspiring young individuals to persevere, regardless of how insurmountable the challenges appeared. Yet amidst the changes in his life, Darius held on to that pivotal moment on the runway when Eleanor had knelt before him, and he understood that his value was not dictated by his history, but by his bravery to move ahead. The ring adorning his finger transcended mere symbolism of affection. This moment showcased the incredible impact of faith, the resilience of humanity, and the reality that often the most remarkable tales start with the most unassuming gestures of courage. As the jets ascended into the vast expanse above, propelling them toward a horizon brimming with potential, Darius realized that his adventure was merely at its inception,